It's the consultant's fault. It's always the consultant's fault.
Thank you all for coming. Just want to provide an overview of kind of what some of you, if this is going to be nothing new, nothing that you've not ever seen before, and some of you, and hopefully maybe you pick up some things that maybe you didn't know. Okay, let's see. Can you advance the slide for me, Lisa? Sorry. So Indian River has a long-term history. Our district, as well as the county, was established in 1925. This is just a series of pictures I could commemorate or kind of show our long-term history of ditching and diking to create the impoundments that we utilize as source reduction to reduce mosquito populations. Back when fog trucks were in essence how they came up with their name, because either the diesel or even the DDT that we used created such a fog in comparison to what we have today. This is Dr. Rogers doing some assessments which is now known as the Medical Entomology Lab, and our second director from district history, Mr. John Beidler, is also here. You'll notice this is the same table as this table right here. So not that this table's been 1925, but I'm sure it was from the 50s when Mr. Beidler took over. So we have a long-term history. Those of you that don't know, our district is an independent taxing district, special taxing district. We are independent from the county. We have 3 elected commissioners that serve as our board members, the governing board. We have about 30 employees full-time, and we have about an $8 million budget. So what uncommon to some is our district boundary does not include the entire county boundary. Some programs of our sister colleagues do cover, but we cover about 2/3. We utilize and serve the areas of Fellsmere, Sebastian, Orchid Island, Indian River Town Shores, and Vero Beach. So our control measures, we cover control over all phases of the life cycle of the mosquito. So we start and we look at the eggs. What we're trying to do is we're trying to prevent the production and remove sources that the female can lay her eggs. These are from the genus Aedes. These are some of our salt marsh mosquitoes and or our domestic mosquitoes. Others lay them in rafts and lay them in the water. This is just a visual of what it looked like with a plant saucer. So these are some of our domestic mosquitoes where they lay their eggs. Once it's inundated, they turn into larvae. So how do we control these? Well, we utilize what we refer to as source reduction. We utilize our pumps. This is one of our portable pumps. We do have more permanent pumps in place that are electric, but we're pumping water from the lagoon into these managed marshes and to try to prevent areas for the female mosquito to lay her eggs. We also, on more of a domestic side, are looking for dipping and tossing and dumping sources of water in places that contain water, like plant saucers, 5-gallon buckets, rain barrels, tarps, and other things that can provide very nice habitat for the female to lay her mosquitoes and the mosquitoes to develop within. We also have a waste tire program that we've been doing for several decades now, where we remove those waste tires from the public right-of-ways. So from the marshes to tip and toss to removal. But if we're not successful, they turn into the larval stage. And the larval stage is the aquatic form. And our control methods, it's a little delayed in this, or you telling it or am I doing it? So it's having problems finding the signal. Control methods could be on the ground. We have inspectors that cover the area, doing applications of a liquid material. We have boat captains. We have 2 that cover the islands and treat the islands. That's important because if they don't treat the islands, those adults can come off and come into the mainland. They dip and look for their source of larvae and can either treat it by ground if it's a small enough area. If not, they call in the yellow plane, which apparently we're very well known for. Most programs are known for their spray trucks. We're apparently known for a plane that we don't even own. But we contract with the flight service, and that is our best control and more coverage control that we use for larvicide. But if we're not successful there, we have to deal with the adults. These are some of our most pestiferous species: Ferox nigripalpus, Seropha columbiae, floodwater species, Ferox, Serophos ferox, solicitans, and Taeniorhynchus, salt marsh mosquitoes. So how do we control that? We mostly control with our trucks at night. We fog at night because that's when our beneficial insects are less active, so we reduce our potential there. We try to do it after hours when people are not walking and recreating, so we're not spraying when someone's walking their dog or getting their exercise after the long day of work. And we do have the ability to do some hand fogging, so if we go out on a service request where there's some adults present and we want to knock them down, we have the ability to do this, but we're not covering all of those areas. And we do have an aerial contract. These are when we have a threat of disease risk, or after a hurricane when we've had large amounts of rainfall and we have large amounts of mosquitoes coming off. But that's not the only thing that we do. We also do a lot of monitoring. We monitor for not only the mosquito populations, because we are regulated by the state, and we cannot just go out and treat without having justification and meeting strict criteria. So we set a series of traps. This is one example of a CDC light trap that's being we have over 20 of those throughout the district to monitor those populations of mosquitoes. This is an example of a trap collection. This is for all of nigripalpus. We identify by species and by number all of the traps, what we get, because then we can modify our controls depending on what species we're looking for. But we also do disease transmission and risk transmission monitoring. We follow veterinary reports that have reported horse cases for West Nile or Eastern equine encephalitis. We coordinate with the health department and are notified if there's any health reported, so Zika, dengue, chikungunya type of cases. And we also bleed what we call our sentinel chickens. We pull their blood, we test them. They're out in 8 locations throughout the district. We pull their blood on a weekly basis. We send that to the Tampa laboratory at the health department, and they assess that for the antibodies that are built up, if the chicken builds up for those diseases, so we can identify if transmission has occurred. And because the chickens are in a set location, we know that that's where the transmission has occurred, versus some, I think out in California, they use wild birds, and they need cropsy the wild birds if the wild birds, because they're susceptible to the virus. But if the wild bird got infected in Fort Pierce and flew over the county line and died in South Vero, does that mean they got in South Vero? Does it mean it was Fort Pierce? Does that mean it was somewhere else? We don't know. But at least with our populations, those chickens they're stationary, so we know what they do. We also monitor environmental conditions. We monitor rainfall. Rainfall is very important for obvious considerations, but we also have staff that monitor populations and the potential out on the salt marshes. Wind is very critical when we're doing control measures. We can't do adulticide treatments when wind is greater than 10 miles. The moon cycles will affect biological issues that all affect. Temperature and humidity are also important. It also depends on what our level of production for mosquitoes. Higher humidities, higher temperature, faster rapid growth rates. By clicking on that, it will open a map. You can type in your address, and it will fill up a form where you can address what your comment is. Click again. You can also check and see what the treatment schedule is. So if you put your address in and your aerial larvicide, the granular treatment, if it have received treatment or will receive treatment within 7 day window. We also do education and outreach. We've had, this is one of the main picture here is, we had 2 large homeschool groups come this summer and come and educate. We educated them on the biology, the equipment that we use out on our impoundments to maintain. My favorite picture, and I think the favorite test of everything, is when they can be a larvicide for the day, when the larviciders fill these tubs up with water and put some larvae in, and they show them how to use the dippers to collect and trap the larvae. And some are pretty good, and thinking maybe they might come back and be a district employee one day. They were very, very good. And highlight our Sentinel program and our chickens. This one is Sebastian. I think this was a Earth Day event. But we also teach them about biology and show what it looks like, what mosquitoes look like under the microscope. But we also are using, within the last 5 years, we've been using new technology. We've been implementing drones through a contracted basis. There's some current regulation that's going on with the state, hoping to allow a little bit more flexibility in drone use for everyone, law enforcement, forestry, everyone across the state. Right now there's regulation where you can only utilize 4 drones. They're military drones, and they're not set up to do the operations that mosquito control would use. So we're kind of waiting to see what's going on, but this allows us to do precise treatments. Medical Center Field is one of the ones that we started with this technology because it was a challenge. If you know, it's right next to the hospital, it's right next to the bridge, so when we go to fly the big yellow plane over, there's concern because of the medical center, the surgery, the hospital, people recreating and walking on the bridge, conflicts with the airport, making sure the flight pattern, how he flies, was not a problem with the airport. And so the suggestion was, why don't we use a drone? It's a smaller area, we can get in, and we're not bothering anybody. So this has been really an effective tool, and now the larvicide team is looking to expand that on other areas where we can get real precise treatments, where you need small treatments, and we can do that. We've also started an integrated database. Prior to that, all of our information was in silos. Service requests were in a database. Our larvicide inspections were in a database. Our ULV adulticide records were in a database. Our trapping was in a database. Now, employees can look and monitor, and they have all of that information at their fingertips. It's map driven, so they can look, they can find out where their ULV is, they can find out what's sprayed, they can find out the treatments, they can find out the history. If they're going out and someone else has to go out in their place, they can quickly look and research that information. So what are the challenges we have for the future? Climate change is a big one. Whether it's sea level rise, whether it's increase in tropical storms and hurricanes, increase in king high tides with the frequency of such, high tides, increase in growth, more people coming in, more developments where we hadn't had developments before, more customers calling in that we didn't have before. Maybe they're new to our area. They don't know about mosquitoes. They don't know how to find. Environmental concerns could range from anything from the lagoonal water quality and what we do and the health of that environment to endangered species and how our pesticides that we utilize for control, some of our control measures, how that's going to be restricted. Resistance. Our mosquitoes can develop resistance to the products that we're using. We have several of our domestic species that are resistant to the spray that we use routinely in our spray trucks. That takes a tool out of the toolbox. So our diminishing tools, we don't have that many tools to utilize. So as they get taken away, it makes our job more difficult. So these are just things that some of them are current challenges and will continue in the future. So that's why we're here. It's because we need your help. We're asking for your help. We're asking for your input. So what do you feel is working? We'll go to the next slide. What's working? What improvements do you think that the district needs to make? And where would you like to see where the district goes within just the short period of time, which is 5 years? And I know 5 years to me sounds like, wow, 5 years is a long time, but I remember working in the utility, and we were planning for Water 2020 and the water shortage, and I thought, 2020? It was probably 2005. 15 years. seems like it was yesterday. So 5 years is not that long a time, but we wanted to have a meeting where the community could come in, provide their input, and help us guide our strategic planning effort. And so I'm going to turn it over to Charles with C4 Strategic Planning, and want him to kind of share with you how this is going to work, and we'll go from there.
Sure, thank you. So, for those, can everybody hear me in the back? I just want to make sure I'm speaking loud enough. I'm not familiar with your room yet, so I just want to make sure that we're getting enough projection. So, thank you, Director Burrows. My name is Charles Chapman. I am the CEO and owner of C4 Strategies LLC in the city of Naples. For any of you that may or may not know where Naples is, that's in Southwest Florida. Before that, I was the county manager in Hendry County, cattle, citrus, and sugarcane, right between West Palm Beach and Fort Myers. For those of you that don't know where Hendry is, LaBelle and Clewiston are their two municipalities. I was their county manager there for 6.5 years, and prior to that service, I was in Gadsden County, where I currently hang my hat, just outside of Tallahassee, for 9 years, working in the public works side of county operations. Now, to demystify that for people that don't speak government bureaucracies, is I was overseeing road and bridge, mosquito control, animal control, stormwater management, parks and recreation, and then a whole mix and blend of other things. Because basically, anybody remember the Life cereal commercials from the 1980s where Mikey was given anything and they said, just give it to Mikey, he'll eat it? That's sort of what I did as an up-and-coming professional in this particular discipline. So it is my pleasure to be serving as your consultant, walking you through this journey of strategic planning. And so it's kicking off tonight by opening the doors of the district to the community to come in within 3 minutes, which is a reasonable amount of time for the amount of people that we have anticipated to be here, to come in and say, what's on your mind? And the director did a very good job of outlining some of the questions that we'll be looking for from feedback from you. Why? Because I'm going to be making notes, and it gives me a glimpse under the tent of what we're going to get into in a 2-day intensive workshop with invited stakeholders from the community of Indian River County that will walk through a very intensive process of setting the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats analysis of the district. We'll be going through a process of setting the vision, the mission, the core values, and then the strategic goals that will be time sensitive and measurable for the district over the next 5 years. Along with that exercise will be a breakout session where I will work with district staff to put objectives to those goals. And once that package is drafted, it will come back for the Mosquito Control Commission to look at the draft, give us feedback. Hey, we like what you're doing. We don't like what you're doing. You know, defend some of these things that are coming out, or maybe, hey, it's great, proceed. Once we make those adjustments, it then comes back before the commission as amended or adjusted if required for final adoption. That, in a very short explanation, is the journey we're about to embark on over the next 45 days. So stick with us. It's going to be a dynamic discussion. I believe the director is proctoring the public comment portion of it. But I want to just pause for a quick second because I'm the new guy in the room. I will say that I'm very appreciative of what you do. I have family that dates back in this state 8 generations, which is very, very rare. And they oftentimes joke that if it wasn't for air conditioning and mosquito control, Florida would have never been what it is today. Yeah. So you are a critical piece of the puzzle. I'm here to answer any questions you might have before I turn it over to Director Burrows for the public comment portion. But just for a quick second, since we're such a small, intimate group, might as well field a couple of questions before we turn it over. So, anyone, questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
Where did you say what? You went very quickly through kind of your history and your background. So what was the consulting firm you were?
C4 Strategies LLC. It was founded in October of 2021.
Thank you.
Can you define the C4?
It's actually my name, Charles Tyler Chapman IV.
That's not what I expected.
No, it's not
I thought it was going to be command, control, communication.
No, I'm working with a graphic designer to work on something clever, but right now it was just easy for me to say I'm Charles IV, so C4 works, and my wife loved the name, and she agreed to put that on the founding papers as she is my owner and my boss. So.
Woman will come.
Yes. Any other questions? Yes, sir, in the back.
Yes, I'd really like to know your input and where you stand on how important the staff are in an operation like this.
Staffing is always very important, and it needs to be something that is discussed as a part of the overall picture of the goals and objectives, because a goal and objective without people being able to execute it is useless.
I
It's
believe
just what's
everybody
important.
should be involved in that picture, right? You would agree that with the statement saying that everybody should be involved, the people who are affected, the people who are stakeholders, you know, those kinds of people should be involved in any decision or comments that are made, correct?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, I've already outlined the process,
Okay,
which
I'm
involves
just
both
confirming that
a
that's,
stakeholder group,
Yes.
the elected body, and district staff.
okay. Well, I would just like to let you,
That's-
you and everybody else know that I'm a former
This is not the public
employee.
comment portion.
Well, this is
Can
going
you
to
wait,
be.
please? We've not got to that portion of this
Well,
agenda.
it is important that you know who I am.
I understand
because
that,
I'm
but this
going
is
to
not the
become a
public
very
comment
important
portion.
person.
Unless it's a direct question, that's
Yes,
not
sir.
germane to our session of this agenda.
Okay,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you. I'll turn it over to Director Burrows.
So we're gonna try to do this within, you know, reasonable time. I didn't wanna set a time limit depending on if we had a lot of people, I wanna narrow the time, but since we have a small group, if you're a district employee and you want to speak as a citizen, you're very welcome to do so. You will have an opportunity as a staff member to provide that input, but if you wanna speak as a taxpayer, you're more than welcome, because this is a community meeting, this is a town hall meeting. So I would like to just make sure that your comments and your suggestions that are relevant to strategic planning and where we're going. Please try to stick to our focus. If there's anything other that you would like to speak on, I would recommend that if you want to speak to our governing board, we have a board meeting coming up on Tuesday the 13th at 9 a.m. and welcome you to come and just address the board at that time. So with that, we can start the public comment. So, yes, sir.
I have, the first question probably sets the stage for the rest of the month.
Yes, sir.
Who are the stakeholders? Can you define, you've referred to the stakeholders several times. Who are the stakeholders?
Well, the stakeholders on a generalized area are everyone. Everyone is a stakeholder. Your taxpayers are partners. When we did the meeting to have a focused meeting for the workshop, we focused on our community partners. We have Indian River Land Trust. We have Department of Health. We've invited each mayor of each of the municipalities, the city or town manager of those same municipalities, the county, our county conservation group. I know I'm missing some, Lisa, if there's anyone else that I'm thinking of. We didn't want to have, as directed by the consultant, we don't have a whole huge group, but we wanted to have a focus group, because the more people, the more cumbersome it gets to get everybody's ideas, if I'm correct in that. So why we wanted to have this meeting is because the members of the community are part of our stakeholders, but how do we reach out, how do we get there? So we did put on our website that you could email your comments, so if people could not attend, they still could put their comment in. To my knowledge, we've not received a single email from anyone regarding this issue. And then we had this meeting that was available, we've had it advertised on our website, to hope that we could get the taxpayers, the citizens' input in this process. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it might not be a bad idea to list someplace, anywhere on the website, who the stakeholders are, so, because I've had people ask me the same question. When I say
Are you
people-
asking who the stakeholders are that are invited, or who the stakeholders we consider as stakeholders? Because this is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
specific,
I would say the ones who were invited, and if you mean the taxpayer, then that's all you have to do is list taxpayer in the group, that's what I'm saying. Can I confuse that issue?
no, I'm just thinking it would be confusing if I put it on the website as such. I'm just,
But I agree that you need to keep the meetings relatively small.
I think what may be able to answer your concern is, in the document itself, there will be a list of who participated. So there'll be that recording of who the invited interest group representatives are. Maybe I should use that term, vested interest group. Because everybody that pays taxes is a stakeholder. Everybody that pays taxes is a shareholder in this organization, somehow, some way. You may not like the term shareholder, but that's what happens when you're giving your tax.
No, I agree with you. I don't
Yes.
like the word everybody.
Well,
That's where you-
and
that's
we
where
can
you-
debate that all day over a cup of coffee, but
Yeah.
and
That's
I
where it
agree
breaks
with
down.
you. But I think it may be important to work on some messaging, and I'm happy to suggest you some language for you to consider. So,
Don't want to leave anyone out. Don't want to exclude anybody or make anyone feel that they were excluded from that. PJ.
So back to staffing. You believe that the future of mosquito control and your strategy should have good staffing, right, and good staffing policies, right? That's a rhetorical question. Does anybody else agree that?
What's
that
an
is-
example of good staffing policy?
Good staffing policy would be an example to not show bias for one staff or employee over another. I'll give an example of if an employee became sick during COVID and was fired for a late policy, but another employee was caught stealing government funds and was put on a probationary period. He wasn't fired for that. I would like to know, does that seem biased to anybody in this room? Because that is exactly what
PJ,
Director,
PJ,
that is exactly what Sherry and
Hey,
Hart are a
PJ.
part of.
PJ, this is for strategic planning.
It
This
is, and
not
you.
to
How
answer-
long have you been? Answer me this question. How long have you been with Indian River Mosquito Control?
PJ,
How long have you
PJ,
been with
that
Indian
is
River
not-
Mosquito
that is
Control?
not relevant to
It
what
is,
we're
because I have
talking
been here.
about.
I was here the same amount. We started at the same time. You became director, and I brought complaints to the director, the
PJ,
previous director,
Excuse me,
about
PJ,
you, and nothing was done about
This is not
it.
relevant to what
It
we're
is
talking
because you are not going to have a staff if you
I-
continue.
I would like to
I
read.
think you're out of
This
line.
is not in it, but the thing is, mosquito control has always been biased and actually have fired people here, and actually one of the guys worked for me, they did fire for no reason, okay? They made some Trump thing up about he wouldn't let a commissioner go into the restaurant. I actually was standing there and I saw the whole situation, and it wasn't true, but they fired him because they didn't want him here anymore because he didn't like somebody that was here. So,
Okay,
this has always
exactly
been
what
here,
happened.
but
But
this is not the time
this
for
Ask
is-
the
it.
right
This
questions,
is
you
not-
will get fired. I was told by
this is
Hart,
not-
do not
I
go
would
to
like
the
to
director.
recess the
Do
meeting.
not go
We
to
will
the
have, we will
commissioner.
reconvene in 10 minutes,
And I was
please.
fired for it. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not good.
Harry Melton, that used to work here, you people fired him for no reason. And I was really upset, and I was never even asked about it. And I happened to be a witness there at the time when it happened. And Doug said, and fired him, and I was really upset about that. He was a really good worker.
And I was the same witness to that too, because I was
What?
walking. I was the same witness to that. I was walking in with Keith at Dean.
Keith did not, Harry did not stop him from,
And that's what I'm trying to tell you. Since I've been on the board, I've told this staff they can have my cell phone number and call me anytime they want to. So
you
I
know,
can tell you
that really,
that's
that was
old
the
board.
director that did that,
That's
and that was
old-
not
absolutely.
right. I
That's
should have
old
been
board.
asked what went on
I
there.
agree. That's old board. That's out the window.
Yeah, I don't know.
Things have
Bring that
changed.
up.
Things have changed
Think, yeah, all right, good.
for now. That's why this table you see up there in the 1940s. But yeah, I'm not going down that road.
That's a shame.
I mean, I couldn't even interview people.
So that's how you hijack the meeting.
I asked too hard questions. Bugs me.
Charles, I can tell you, that when you talk about city politics and beer,
Okay. I'm a citizen, but
I don't want to say.
don't let him get twisted
I
down.
don't want to get in trouble.
I'm going to just put my notes back here for a second.
Mm-mm.
Being 6'2", 250 they need to refer to.
How are you, Terry?
Good, how are you?
Doing it.
Been a while.
Yes, it has. How are you, Anna?
I'm good.
Okay.
These walls could talk here.
Yeah. Did you work for the mosquito control?
And I did work here.
Wow.
Yeah, I ran the adult assignment program. There's 2 houses, one is in the only house there, and that's not good. So,
Hi there.
deal sheets.
My name's Rowena. I've never met you. I answer the phone here.
Oh, my name is John Clay.
Oh,
I work here.
I have heard your name. I've heard lots of good things about you. I just wanted to find out. You're the only person I didn't
The
know
work.
in here.
The work is always like me, right? I hope so, right?
Yes.
I remember,
Absolutely. We got a green
did I treat you guys right?
Yes,
That was,
very much so.
It's good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Yeah,
We'll reestablish the
I'm glad
meeting.
I'm retired.
So is there
So I can
anyone who would
speak
like to
in
make
peace.
public comments to address our strategic plan?
I will share, and just for the record, Charles, I'm going out as a commissioner. I've been on the board for the last 8 years, and I think we've had a lot of great major changes in the district from the standpoint of buying equipment that needed to be bought, having staff be a part of the game, and being involved in the game. And more important, I think what you see now, in my opinion, for the future, Indian River County has had 3 board members since 1925. The population has changed a whole bunch. I think if we're approaching 165,000, it is our strategic plan might look out even further as increasing the population, or servant population, that it might be, it might behoove the district to go to a 5-person seat because it's gotten too big for 3, and it's really become powerful for 2 commissioners to sit there and control the meeting. So I really think that's something that could be looked into, is what other districts do. Our soil and water has 5. So it's something I think is a district that for 8 years I've heard the taxpayer, the taxpayer, the taxpayer. And not one time have we had someone come here and balk at our budget, balk at what we do or how we do it. And I can truly tell you, as a sitting county commissioner, when we're going through a $400 million budget, you might have 1 person show up. So it's how you look at it, and it's how you see it. And I think truthfully, maybe the proof's in the pudding of having a executive director that's been here for 35, 40 years, having another director that's been here for 35, 40 years. It tends to be kind of like having a senator and a representative being there for 40 years. They have ownership in it, and that kind of becomes a problem in my mind. But I truly believe that this district is by far one of the best districts in the state of Florida with the way they operate. And I know the counties, I don't think, want to take mosquito control over. And it's one of those things that I applaud you for stepping out and not being afraid to think outside the box. That's how I've seen it for the last 8 years I've been here. And it has been tough, it's been a battle. And even during political season, it gets ugly, it gets nasty. That's probably the most, I'd say 2 years ago, was the nastiest time the mosquito control ever got involved and got in the paper, because it was something that people wanted to write about. It was just nasty. But I really believe there's a lot of good things that could come forward in this strategic planning process, and that's why I'm here. And I plan on being at the meetings next week too. So I'm not letting this go away, and I'm not going off into the sunset. I, like you, 7 generations of Floridians being here, and Indian River County means a lot to me, no doubt. I'm a business owner here in town. My family's involved in that, and this means a lot to me. It does.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you.
And I can tell you, the 8 years that I've been here, the very first meeting I had, Sherry can attest to this with Doug Carlson, is because I gave my cell phone number out to any of the employees who wanted to talk to me. I'm here if you have an issue, I'm here to talk to, and I think that's how we've run this district for the last 8 years as long as I've been here. So,
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Do you guys have any sort of blueprints already that you're kind of looking at for your SMART goals and the SWOT analysis? Or are you guys waiting to come up with something until after we've had this discussion with the public?
If you don't mind. So the question is, do we have a blueprint to follow? Yes, we have a blueprint to follow. I've done, oh Lord, I'm going on maybe 25 different strategic plans in my career. As a strategic planner, as a private business owner, this will be my third since I've launched my business. There's modeling that we can go through, but really the beauty of the process we're going to go through with the interested parties that will be taking part in that 2-day intensive is to walk through not only what district staff and elected officials feel are their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, but then to invite people to the table that have public interest at heart, that they partner with, like there was the land trust, there was the health department, there's other people that they have to engage with on a daily basis, and they're asking them, what do you think our strengths are? And sometimes those things don't line up, and in that dynamic discussion is where you begin to, my job is to feather out what are those differences? Why don't they line up? What can we do to make a strength even stronger? What can we do to take a weakness and turn it into an opportunity or a strength? What can we take a threat and turn it into an opportunity? Those types of dynamics. And that's why it's split the way it is. So yes, there's a very real blueprint to follow. Each person that's participating will get to weigh in on what their favorite things are by a voting process that's not unique to me. It's called dot-mocracy. It's a way that they can go and vote as they go up, and you begin to see with a color coding dot where the heat penetration is. What's a hot item? What's not a hot item? It's a very easy way for there to be consensus building. And what we leave with is that everybody, after doing the SWOT analysis, understands that the group agrees that these are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, because not everything that gets put on the board is going to make it.
Right.
There may be some things that get honorable mention because it was important. And it may not have gotten a popularity vote, but sometimes you have to put things in that you don't want to put in. The next day with vision, mission, core values, goals, those 4 components is a very similar process. It's a little bit more grammar intensive, although we're not going to get bogged down in grammar and whether or not the Oxford comma is the best thing to use. But we are going to get into the discussion of what is the vision for the district for the next 5 years. You can't just use a tired generic vision anymore because it doesn't speak to the staff, it doesn't speak to the public, it may not even be relevant. Now granted, it's a very small scope operation. I mean, this is a, I'm not going to say one-trick pony because you see all of the different things that they do to be able to attack the enemy, which is the disease-spreading mosquitoes, and comfort and quality of life. So there's a variety of different things, but the vision should inspire that. Then the mission gets a little bit more granular. How are we going to achieve that mission? And then the values, what do we stand for as a district? How do we relate to others? And then when you get to the objectives, those objectives ought to line up with the vision, mission, and core values you just stated. And if they don't, there's a problem. You can't say I'm going to make a banana pudding and then go over here and make chocolate chip cookies. That doesn't line up, so it has to make sense. And that prototype that you're asking me about is a well-worn, beautifully laid road that a lot of people have gone before you, and there's several districts that have done this before.
I guess I didn't mean to say a blueprint because obviously you've been doing this for as long as you have. Of course you have an idea of how this is supposed to go.
Yes, ma'am.
I meant more in the direction of like, have you guys already kind of sat down and thought about some,
Great question.
you know what I mean?
I think I know what you're going for. Do I have a teaser trailer and have I already started writing the document?
Yes.
The answer is no.
Okay.
Okay, we've not talked about anything related to the substance of the activities coming forward. She doesn't know what I've read about your district. I familiarize myself about the district or the client that I'm working with so that I don't come in and look like a complete buffoon. I want to be able to walk into a debate potentially between two people at a table where they're trying to work through a problem. And if I'm not familiar with the budget or headlines or relevant things going on with the city of Vero or Sebastian or anything else that may be impacting what you're doing, then I'm not doing my job as a facilitator. But that's as far as I've gone. The document is not drafted. This is my laptop. Anything that is related to public government, you can have this laptop and look through it at any point in time. It's all on Google Docs. You can find it through a back channel if you want. But there is nothing that is pre-prescribed here other than the PowerPoint presentation that will take us through the process on the 2-day intensive. It is a blank slate.
Cool. Thank you very much. I was just mainly curious because I wasn't sure, and I knew this was going on, and I knew there were meetings in a couple weeks, but I mostly just was like, so I was just curious, are they waiting for input, or do they kind of have their own ideas? So I appreciate that answer. That
I'm
answers
coming in
perfectly.
completely unbiased. I'm not the MC, so I'll direct your hand to her, and she recognizes you. And
Go ahead, Mr.
Tom made his point, and I haven't been a commissioner, but I have been involved for, I've lived here 17 years. And I've been involved with this for about 3.5 years. And going back to the previous election, which was really nasty, there were some people who tried to tear up the whole organization, and they did not succeed. I'm not sure why I care about mosquito control. I'm still trying to figure that out. But I do know that this county was called Mosquito County before there was mosquito control. And since I would tell you a little bit about why I'm interested. I taught organizational planning and development, and I was on a team of a small company, 1 and 5 year long range planning. 10 of us on the team developed the plan. So I've got 50 years experience with strategic planning.
Awesome.
CEO of 4 companies. Awesome. I think there's a lot of good things about mosquito control, and I think there's some things that need to improve. If I had to give you one, just quick off the top of my head, it's communication.
Okay.
All right? That's one.
Can I ask a drill down
What?
question? Can I ask a drill down?
Oh, yeah.
to that? When you say communication, because communication means a lot of different things.
You should never ask me to drill down.
So all I'm going to ask is just a couple, just considering that we're trying to
Yeah.
the time that we're given. Are you talking about social media outreach to meet people where they're at in today's environment? Are you talking about better use of the website, driving people to the website?
Yes, and yes.
So all of the total package.
I think the problem with, Tom will tell you, and I'll use Tom's name because he's told me this a few times, nobody ever shows up, so why bother, right? Or why have Zoom and video when nobody comes? Well, that's a chicken and an egg thing, and it's not a sentinel chicken, but people don't understand mosquito control. They think it's a $26 add-on to their tax bill. They don't have mosquitoes in their yard, so why should they be worried? The fact is, I'll leave this with you instead of talking, okay? You can take that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's all about good technical staffing. It's about this is a business. It's an $8 million business with finance and purchasing and subcontracting and human relations. And if the business doesn't run well, then the mosquitoes don't get killed.
Correct.
It's very technical. Sherry talked about drones. Fantastic way to attack the problem. Buying a little yellow plane is not a good idea. That would be a bad capital investment. The fact there are a lot of assets in the organization mean there should be a reserve, an asset reserve. There needs to be a look at the capital over a 5-year period and see what's going to depreciate, what's going to break, what has to be replaced, and how are you going to provide for that, and that's called a reserve. And and some of the money needs to be put aside as a reserve. That shouldn't be touched. That's capital reserve. Everybody works out of one pocketbook. Even some city managers do that, but they don't do that in Sebastian, okay? I live in Sebastian. I'm on the Budget Finance Committee for Sebastian. There was 7 7 residents who review the whole city budget before it goes to the city council. So I'm not the guy who was sitting in the back of the room.
Understood. Give my regards to Mr. Carlisle. He and I have been colleagues for many
We
years.
spend a lot of time.
Yes, sir.
They're looking at succession. You need to have a succession plan too, eventually. I disagree with one thing Tom said, that they had 2 directors at 40 years apiece. There's nothing wrong with that. Those guys were geniuses. They were brilliant. Maybe they weren't the best managers, but they were very smart guys, and the depth of technical talent has to stay in this organization, and it's not going to survive. That's enough for now.
Terry, can I, and I don't wanna get this into debates I'm not gonna debate. Sherry, I think first of all, I said nothing about the leadership of the executive directors.
No, you said that.
You came along, and I'm gonna throw something out there too. You came along 3 years ago.
That's right.
Where were we 3 years ago? Did we have a website?
What are you gonna, what are you
I'm
gonna?
just asking you, did we have a website 3 years ago that you can get on there and look at? And really-
It wasn't a very good
Okay, so
website.
that's all I want to say.
It wasn't a very good website. And that's a side, that's what I tell my sister is you're gonna go sideways now.
I'm not going sideways. With some of the stuff you talked to me about in the newspaper, I'd go really sideways on you, but
Well,
I'm
that
not doing
wasn't
it.
an insult, I'm
That's
just
okay,
saying.
that's okay.
I wanna go on record as defending, I think that Beedlam and Doug Carlson were in their stripes and they were excellent.
And I didn't say they haven't.
I know, you said they were just here too long.
You have done the job that you're doing, great job. Just stay out of the way.
Okay, so, yes, there's a lot in the strategic plan. And it needs to be, and there's a set of rules that work. You say, I think there's a very good set of rules that help with a strategic plan. I wouldn't go any deeper, but I am gonna raise my hand and volunteer to be invited. I might have to go to Port Carlisle to get that. I'm not sure if I'm a stakeholder, but I would love to be back here for those 2 sessions. If I get an invite. You give me a little badge.
I'll be here with you every day.
Sean? I'm sorry, I feel like I have many questions and I don't wanna take anyone else's time in case anyone else has questions, but, I don't see anyone else raising their hand, so, I actually had a question for you, sir. You mentioned communication, as you wanna see more of it, but, would you mind offering some more examples of like what you'd like to see?
Who is it I'm speaking to?
That,
Sorry?
if I might,
Who is it I'm speaking to?
Not
No,
you,
I'm asking you.
I think this should be a
Yeah,
sidebar outside if you don't mind.
yes, you're right.
You two can have that
Oh, okay.
conversation. I'm sorry.
no, that's
It's
okay.
just We're
I-
trying to get to the germane of the strategic plan, so, sorry.
No, that's
We
okay.
have
I
staff
thought
in
you
here
guys
that are here.
might have been part
The
of it.
city
My
councilman
bad.
says direct everything to the mayor.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
So does anybody else
No, I
have
can
any comments for the strategic plan?
I have some.
You're going, the improvements should be made, okay? We're gonna discuss some of that tonight.
No, this was for you all, if you had ideas.
Well, I was just wondering about more, water quality testing of the impoundments and stuff. I was just wondering, how much do they actually do on water quality testing today? Because I know in the old days, we used to do water co-op. One guy did do water quality testing. We didn't do it for the district, just to see how bad the impoundments get during the summertime. You know, from the water sitting there and the heat, and I mean, you know, and the oxygen levels drop down and stuff like that. And I mean, they get pretty bad. And, you know, the district has planned for the future for the impoundment, maybe to make it better in some ways.
So I think to answer your question, it will have to be, so the way this system is going to work, I don't have that answer for you. I don't, because I've never been out to water testing impoundment, to be honest with you. I may have walked by one, but I've never tested one. So what will happen is, if the group comes up with a goal that says, we want to monitor or increase monitoring and improve water quality in our impoundments, that's the goal. And we want to see it done, I don't know what measure it might be, but it's going to be X times Y by 2028, just to make that number up. The staff will then have to come up with the objectives of how they're going to hit that mark, based on the resources they have, the resources that they need to have to be able to hit that mark. But the group that'll be meeting will get a strategic goal that says, we want you to be able to do this in the next 5 years. And then it's the staff's responsibility to work with me to wordsmith the objectives to make them make sense and make sure that they're reasonable. So I will be talking to the director, I will be talking to the finance officer, because if they haven't got the money today, it's got to come from somewhere, and they need to start having that conversation built in and baked into this whole conversation as we move forward. So I can't answer your question today, but give us a few weeks, and we may have an objective that you can chew on and then comment on at the public adoption hearing. Okay?
Just as a side note, John, we do have water quality as a capital to contract water quality sampling, because you are correct in that they didn't do we haven't done water quality sampling for a while, and I think it's important.
Yeah, because we did not, the water was really bad, but the reason we didn't want to do it is because of that reason. We never did anything with it back then, and I didn't know for the future it was something I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the river and the fish and stuff like that, so that's important to me.
I just wanted to answer that.
And then I have one other little thing about improvements. I know we've got these fleet of trucks out here, and they go out and they spray. And for an example, we'll take up in Sebastian, Zone 54. When a truck does that zone, we get about 103% coverage, okay? Out of 100%, because of the grid system, we get a little over 100% coverage, so which works fine. But let's pick a zone like 62 out west of town. When you send a truck out there, it gets 7% coverage. 7% coverage of 100% is not very good. And I was just wondering, what does the district plan for the future to improve that for the people that live out west of town? But when a truck goes there, I mean, they get maybe 10 minutes relief, and then all of a sudden, because the spray only goes out about 150 feet or so, that's why it works good in the grid system, but out there, and then the mosquitoes come back in. And I mean, they're taxpayers, and I was just wondering what the district for the future plans to make things a little bit more livable out there, since more people are actually living out there than what used to be, as far as the population.
Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic goal, is to look at the zones that are not getting as much coverage percentage. And then that tasks, if that goal makes it through the crucible, it gets blessed, then that's where the staff would then come in and say, okay, here are some objectives that we can do over the next 5 years to get that percentage up. And a good goal always, in my mind, has some sort of a benchmark to it. It can't just be, well, we're going to improve coverage. Well, if you're getting 7%, you go to 8%, you've improved coverage. That's meaningless. So maybe it's, we're going to go from 7% in XYZ zone to 15% in the next 2 years. Hopefully by a certain milestone, we'll have it up to 50% or 100%, ideally, whatever it may possibly be. I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about, but they do. And so if there's a goal that states we're going to improve coverage by this date, then the staff will have to come up with the objectives to be able to achieve that. So,
I'd like to add to your comment. A good goal absolutely has to have feedback and something. Not maybe, but has to.
correct.
Or you'll be like the state is with Oak Hill.
Well, you don't want to have the tail wagging the dog.
Well, you don't want to have promises that never get accomplished.
And I'll add to that, I don't want to have a plan that sits on the shelf either.
Absolutely.
We need to have a plan that we're going to actually utilize. And
Did we ever
that's
have a
my
plan?
goal.
Did we ever have a
Working
plan?
with Not a formal plan that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Karen, I wanted you to hear that too.
Is there any other, I'm sorry, did you have
The
something?
gentleman in the black
Oh,
shirt.
no, Charles, you answered it, but all of what I was just really gonna piggyback because we trying to find a way, as he's saying, that's why we having that's why we're having this whole discussion, the whole meeting, the whole town meeting, plus, next week we will have the 2 days. The main objective that we're trying to get, that, I can add things to it, as in when you're in a leadership role, you must be for the people.
Yes.
So when we bring stuff to the table, like I say, you're in a budget, and it's like, how can we maneuver around and do things within the set budget that we have? Does it always stay set, or do the budget itself need to be improved in order to achieve it that we're gonna put together, and then we'll be open-minded to it,
Right.
moving forward, for the people.
Absolutely. I totally agree with your summation. Once this document has been blessed by the governing board with its goals and objectives, it is then incumbent upon the executive director and her team of generals to lead the district in developing a budget that directly ties back to that strategic plan. So not to put Sherry on the spot, but the governing board, when they get that budget recommendation, ought to be looking for references back to the strategic plan for things. And if it's not there, then that should trigger questions automatically. So this document is very important. If you're going to be strategic planning, goal-focused, objective, measurable, focused budgeting, it's going to change the way you operate. It just has to change, because if I dare say, you probably brought some change to the table, but there's probably some things that you haven't touched in your line items in forever. There's probably some things that have been sacred cows that shouldn't be touched because of, I don't know, come up with a reason. Strategic planning calls all of those things out of the closet. It says everything's fair game. If it's not in the strategic plan, it should not get funded.
I have a question. With the development board, what did they see in the district? Because I used to go down there when I was here to see the 5 years what the district had planned for how much new homes or new communities. Is that something that the district is working with for the future? I mean,
We received the emails from the technical review committee, so of developments and plans that are coming through the planning department.
Correct,
Much
yes,
as we did,
yeah,
we're still evaluating those. One of the things that I've done differently that wasn't done before was I'm actually mapping those, because a lot of them, like when you were here, John, you were over the ULV
I was
program.
mapping out
Yeah.
for the future and
And
always
so-
had them in the plans and how I would have to rechange the district, the zones, because you can't
Right.
keep them the same. I mean, I did actually, I know this, I looked them up, they're still the same, but I had actually had a whole brand new system that I was gonna implement, but I retired, thank God. And, but the thing is, with all this new homes going in, and on the budget was say, and I don't know, the millage rate, I don't know if you've gone down or up, but with all these newer homes, are you having more money so you can actually expand with mosquito control and do things like, for the future,
Well, and we're putting
Better
those,
equipment,
we're
we'll
putting
say.
those in GIS and putting those on so that
Okay.
our ULV section can monitor that, because we're getting them. I don't have an indication of when that's gonna be developed, but I know that, so we can do it for planning, to know that those ULV zones, what we're spraying today, in 5 years, we're not gonna hit at that within the same amount of time if there's orange groves that are now housing developments. That's more street network that we have to do.
Yes, I know.
So,
Yeah.
so we're still continuing that, and we're trying to improve that process, if that just kind of helps add to that. Yes, sir.
Two questions. So, one, for every 5-year plan, there should be a 1-year plan. And without the 1-year plan, too much time goes by. And whenever we did long-range planning, we had a 1-year, and it repeated every year, so you got to adjust it. And it was meshed with the 5-year plan. And my suggestion would be that that be a high priority. The second question was for Sherry.
Yes.
With the invitation to the stakeholders, did you get RSVPs? I'm just curious whether you got enough interest for people to actually show up. It's a 2-day session, that's a big hunk out of someone's schedule.
Yes, we have, do you have the number off the top of your head,
We
Lisa?
have 28
Mhm.
stakeholders.
I don't-
Fred Jones?
we had I don't think we have anybody from Sebastian.
Nobody? I'll
No, sir.
stay.
No, you got me invited.
You sure you'll have somebody from Sebastian?
I'm sure you will.
I had a question about goals and objectives. I've heard you use both words, goals and objectives. Are those not the same? Is there a different
They're
definition?
absolutely different.
Can you define those for me?
Sure. So this is not going to be anywhere close to Webster's dictionary version. A goal should be more broad and what it's trying to accomplish. So it's saying something like, we're going to improve coverage on our grid system by, I'm going to make up a number, 2030. All grids should be at minimum X%, whatever that is. The objectives then go, well, for us to be able to do that, we need to look at all of our grids. So objective 1, review and analyze every grid. 2, by the next year. 2 would then be, based on that analysis, identify and list out a capital improvement projects list to be purchased within that year that will provide us the equipment that we need to be able to close that gap.
So objectives are the steps taken to achieve the goal?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Think of it more of in terms of tactics, because sometimes in corporate America they use tactical objectives. There's also some things that are soft objectives, which tend to be things like we're going to improve our performance evaluation system based on our core values. That's not a tactical, that's a soft skill type thing. I'm probably muddying that up for you.
There's a lot of
But
definitions. But
there is.
I can Google it. It's
There
fine. Thank you, I appreciate it.
So are there any more questions for public comment, to solicit public comment on this? Okay, so
If I could ask one question, Chair. We have 4 sitting commissioners sitting in here. I voiced my opinion. I'd like to hear from the other 3. I'd like to hear what they might be thinking, what they're looking at. Charles, can you hear this? Charles, if they feel they want to speak.
My name's Matt Erpenbeck. I'm one of the 3 sitting commissioners. I purposely have not commented because I figured my day would be coming. And this is really about the public getting to weigh in. So I really don't feel that I should waste time with my 2 cents. My day will come, so to speak.
Well, I'm concerned with what you feel or what you think for the future. I mean,
I do, but as I said, there's going to be a segment of this process where I will be adding my input. But this meeting is really for the public, not for the public to hear me talk. Do you understand what I'm saying?
catch him in the parking lot.
Yeah, that doesn't mean I'm inaccessible. If we want to talk afterwards, please. I'm glad to speak with you.
And I'm Janice Broda, and I agree with Commissioner Erpenbeck's comments, and you are welcome to catch me in the parking lot or call me at home, whatever you'd like to do.
And I'm Anna Kirkland, and I'm not in yet.
You can still have an opinion now.
You know, I have plenty. Shots.
so she won.
She did win.
Well, no, but I had friends asking me who to vote for, and I always have an input on who I feel.
Right-hand woman.
I thought new blood would be good.
So if we don't have any other public comment, then we're gonna close that out. And, since we have a little time, if you don't mind, staff and commissioners, public, you're welcome to stay, I'm not kicking you out, but, Charles was gonna take some time and kind of go over what to expect for the stakeholder meeting, the workshop. I'm gonna call it a workshop. I'm gonna get away from stakeholder because Mr. McGinn is gonna have my high.
No, I don't have a problem with the word.
Right.
I just wondered who they were.
But he's just gonna go
That's
over.
communication.
He's gonna go over the expectations and kind of prepare. So that's gonna be the time, now that we have public comment, to ask questions of procedural type things. So I'm gonna turn it back over to you.
So are we still live streaming?
Yes, is this, if there's a point where I need to cut the stream because of some regulation, please let me know, because I'm more than happy to do that.
No, it's just gonna be really boring, so.
Oh, I got you, yeah.
It's not the public comment, we're just gonna talk.
I
Yeah.
just gotta lose my jacket, so.
No, that's fine. I always stream this just, I stream this up even people watch or not,
I
yeah.
love it, public transparency, it's great.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
no problem there. So for staff and elected officials, I'm gonna take elected officials first because I know you may have to go do something. Elected officials are usually incredibly busy, not the staff busy, but you've got more people pulling at you. Elected officials, so one of the big things that I say this to every group, so just bear with me. Civility is key. We understand there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of personality, you got elected for a reason. You stand on your values, whatever they may be, and there's going to be disagreements. So what I would ask is that you keep in mind this filter is this moment a political moment, or is this germane to the strategic planning? So that's not directed at any individual. I can show you my script. I say it to every group that has an elected body present and participation. Not every group has elected members attend the strategic planning workshop. This is new. This is different for you guys probably. So I'm glad to see the elected members there because your voice adds value. With that, also remember, you're the policymakers. So your lens, while you're looking at the objectives or the goals, that needs to be set from, I need to be clear, that objective needs, or goal needs to be from a policymaker's perspective. What is it that you may have said on your campaign trail is germane to that discussion? But as you're working with your fellow table mates, you may realize that you've made something, said something on the campaign trail that may not translate well to a policy object or goal for the organization. So I want you to be open-minded to that. You know, be willing to say, okay, maybe I need to pump the brakes on something. Maybe I need to look at it from a different perspective. Add value. Those of you that have institutional knowledge, you've been on the board for a while, clue that in. But also, I would look at you as being a representative of that community and being able to kind of help me proctor at the table so that no one's voice is being drowned out. If a person wants to be heard, kind of help me encourage those people at the table. Because you want to hear that voice too. I'm sure you do. So if you could help partner with me on those three things, keep it at the policy making level. We'll get with staff to get the, how do we move the block of cheese from this cracker to the next one and the next one as it relates to your goal. But I don't want to get you bogged down into operations. This is really to be at that 50,000 foot area, okay, where the policy lives. Encouraging participation from everybody at the table. There could be some strong personalities at your table. You may be one of them. Fair enough speech. But making sure that we're encouraging that participation will help me as your facilitator to have success at each one of the tables. And then lastly is, if you have a question between now and the workshop, I will give you my cell phone number. Sherry's got it. Lisa's got it. Call me. I will be happy to talk to you. I will tell you this. I am an ICM-ACM ethically bound credentialed city manager. So when I talk to an elected member of a particular district, I am compelled by the ethics to call your executive director and let her know that I talked to one of her bosses. Okay, so it's not that I'm tattletaling, it's ethic tenet number 4 of the ICMA Code of Ethics. I'm ethically bound to do that, okay? That's it, all I have for commission members. Is there any direct question to me about the strategic planning process? Insults, injuries, critiques? Okay. You will have my cell phone number by tomorrow morning. That way, if you have questions, and I'm sure you have many, call me. I'm happy to answer those questions. For staff, while you're going through the process, I need your courageous voices. I need you to step up. As directors, as leaders of the organization, if you know resources have been a problem, and resources can mean any number of different things, and you hear a goal being developed, and you're like, there's no way in Sam Green's earth that this is ever going to get done in 5 years. There's not enough tax money on the planet to get it done. I need someone from the staff to go, flag on the play, can we take a time out? let's talk about this, and let's make sure that we're not putting something in the 5-year plan that we're not gonna be able to achieve. Okay, and you guys know that because you're moving the cheese literally from the cracker to cracker to cracker every single day. You're beating it out. You live within this budget that's been approved by the policymakers. So having that proper tension is where we need to live. Tension is a good thing. Not all stress is bad. Some stress is good. I need you to have courageous voices and say, hey, well, we need to take a time out here. Let's think about this. There may be a really amazing goal to have a completely electrical fleet of vehicles by the end of this 5-year period. But if you know you don't have the charging stations, the technical know-how, the mechanics to work on it, the supply chain, heck, you can't get a chip out of India or China to get it here to build the darn thing, so how are you going to get it in 5 years? Somebody needs to throw the flag on the play and say, that goal is great, but that may be a 10-year goal. That may not be a 5-year goal. And I can help work through that if you guys are having a struggle. But I need those plans at the table, specifically from folks that are in the know, working with your partners from the outside agencies to help temper that conversation just a little bit. We want to dream big, but we don't want to be so big that it's not relevant, that it's not measurable, that it's not actionable. To what this gentleman said, a 5-year plan is great, but you got to live in year 1, and you got to get year 1 done. And if year 1 doesn't get done in year 1, then something's got to bleed over to year 2, and there's got to be flexibility built in. So we want a plan that has both aspirational goals, but attainable objectives to get to those goals. Does that make sense from the staff perspective? If there's things that you know you've been dying for and you've never had the chance to ask for it, you see a goal being developed around it, weigh in. There's no drawback to saying, I want an all-electrical fleet in the next 5 years. It may not be practical, but have the conversation, but temper it. Temper it. I believe the commissioner used the term out-of-the-box thinking. I kind of go against that. I go in-the-box thinking, because I think the most creativity happens when we live within our constraints. We let our constraints drive us to a new creative solution. Because if you think out of the box and everything's fair game, then you're living a little bit in utopia. So when you put your constraints back in, then you can look at things more creatively, and maybe you have to look at it very differently. Like the guy that created the Rubik's Cube, I don't know if you've ever watched the story, great thing on History Channel if you ever get a chance to watch it. He had to stop thinking about it as solving it side by side by side, and he wasted probably 2 years working on this timeless gadget with it. It wasn't until he changed the way he looked at it completely within the constraints of what he was looking at, he knew he had to match it in his mind in a 3D map, that he finally solved the Rubik's Cube. That's a very complex way of saying he lived within the constraints. The cube didn't change, he didn't get more cubes, he didn't get more blocks, he didn't do anything outside the box, but he lived within that constraint until he finally figured out the problem. So I didn't want to take you to task on it. I'm picking at you more than anything. It's just I have that way of thinking because I've lived on very, very shoestring budgets before with departments that needed an $8 million budget, but they had a $500,000 budget. So, questions from staff to me. Insults, injuries, bruises.
They'll wait and ask me tomorrow.
Okay, well, you will also have my cell phone number.
Ask him.
You will have my cell phone number. We're going to get to know each other very well between the goal setting stage to when you're doing your objectives. We will be getting to know each other, probably mostly by like Zoom or MS Teams or phone calls or shared documents. But we're going to work through that process together so that when you produce something out with the director's blessing to the board, that it's all ship-shape and ready to go.
So Charles, do you mind going over, going over what the product you'll get from the workshops?
Yes.
And then how that's going to come over to staff, and then what our role is with that next, to get it to a draft document and going back to the board for.
Right, so what will come out of the workshops is a document that has obviously the standard stuff, cover page, methodology, dates, who we are, the basics, but then it gets into what was the SWOT analysis and what ranked highly in that SWOT analysis. For those of you that don't live and die by acronym, I apologize. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. SWOT, SWOT. That needs to be in the document because there needs to be a timestamp to say in 2022/23, this was what we were living with. And then here are the goals that follow the mission, vision, mission, and core values that follow of how we're going to take these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats and operate. And then there's the goals that follow it that live within the vision, mission, and core values to accent your strengths, mitigate your weaknesses, take advantage of your opportunities, and turn your threats into opportunities or mitigate them completely. And it's that document is going to be wordsmithed 3 or 4 times.
Right, but what we're gonna come out from that workshop is the goals, and then
Right.
the goals
then go to staff.
has to take, then staff has to take those goals
Right.
and then develop those objectives from then how, so if if it's using your same example, we're gonna go to electric vehicles in 5 years, then that kicks back to staff and says, okay, staff, we need to figure out how that's gonna happen. Who's gonna do what are those
Right.
specific, what's our action plan to make sure that goal is met?
Right.
And then that goes into a document
That's the whole document.
that
and
will
then
then go back to the elected
gets
officials for their review and,
stamped as a draft.
yes.
It gets sent to the commission. The commission, they can take as much time as you can allow or budget for. I don't know what your constraints are with that. But to walk through that document and say, okay, I'm not going to say that the goals are locked in stone, but you really probably shouldn't want to manipulate them too much once it comes out of the workshop. You may want to change some wording, you may want to change some tags in it. You're living in 5 years here. It's not forever, it's 5 years. But if you see something from your experience, absolutely weigh in and say, I don't think we can do this, but you should treat it with the weight and respect that it's deserved. It came from a workshop of people that were interested, and it came from staff and as well as the elected officials that sat on the board. Hopefully you don't have any of this, and you had outside interested parties that weighed in on those things. So it should carry some weight going into that draft. The objectives, you may not understand what staff is trying to say, and so absolutely, you've got to adopt this thing. You're the elected representative of the people, and if you don't understand it, you shouldn't vote for it. So once you get a chance to look at the objectives, then you can have that debate with the executive director, with the director's staff, and say, okay, I don't understand objective 1.1 about electric vehicles. Can you tell me what 1.1 means, and how does that relate to our budget, and how much more resources are we going to need? So that draft is meant to be beat up pretty good. You ought to raise the hood, take the engine out, and take a good look at it, and know what you're putting back in the car. Once you say, with these amendments, because there's always amendments. There's always amendments. Once it's approved as amended to move forward, then we will make the amendments, polish it, and bring it back for final adoption. Did I hit the...
Yeah, I just wanted to make
benchmarks?
sure everybody understands, kind of how the process and what their expectations are.
Right.
It's kind of it can be a gray matter, and
Very ethereal.
everyone could have their perceptions of what it's like, and so I just want to make sure.
Right.
We do have a seating plan. It was not done by me. I had one of my staff prepare that, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to, as an example, the elected officials will not be at the same table. You will each be at a different table. What we're trying to do is have a diverse group of people that are on there, so that to follow up what Charles, and this was at Charles' advice and counsel, was that you want to make sure you've got a strong personality. We want to make sure we've got, instead of having 4 larviciders at the table, 1 larvicider, but maybe 1 from a different group, and an elected official, and maybe the representative from the land trust, so that there's a sharing of ideas, and it's not like the staff table comes up with this and the commission table comes up with X. So
Yeah.
we're trying to have that diversity as the best word I can come up with. So she came up with the seating arrangement so that when you do come in, you will have, those of you participating will have which table, whether it's the blue table, the red table, the pink table, or table one, or however they're going to not do that, but to facilitate. But I just wanted to, as Charles is here and everyone is, you're here, is that you have any questions on how that's going to go, now's the time. Although he is also offering, he's available by phone if you think of it later, but any questions
Or
on the
email,
process?
Charles, we spoke briefly. Can you tell the group what the time frame of having this completed is?
Oh, absolutely. So you're going into budget season once you get into the new year. I mean, basically for finance officers, budget officers, they're already starting working on the budget as December waxes and wanes and January gets here, as they start to see receipts come in and revenues and those types of things. So really, we need to have this adopted with a bow, ready to go, no later than the end of February. It's got to be done because the staff need the board-approved strategic plan so they can submit their budget requests within your process, whatever that process looks like. So I'm on the hook to get it done by the end of February. So that's my commitment, and benchmark and make it happen. So.
And this is, this was a recommendation, not only because, one, I think it's important that we have a plan. That way we have something we can share with the public and the community, that we have a plan and this is what we're doing. And we tie our budget to that. I think it's very important. Also, under the legislative amendment that went through, we are going to be reviewed, the program review, I anticipate in early spring anyway. And these are things that they're going to be looking at. What are your objectives? What are your goals? What are your performance measures? How do you know? How do you fund it? How do you know if you're being successful in something? And we can probably answer those questions if we're asked, but it's nice to have, well, here's our plan, and here's what we've done, and here's our metrics, and here's how we evaluate and can report on our website on a frequency. Here's our annual report. Here's how we're doing. Here's how we're meeting the goals that the community, that the stakeholders all got together, and here's our adopted plan, and here's how we're measuring our checks and balances. So.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I know I'm sitting in the shade with fall and shiny. You can take aim. That's good. You can see it. It's a great plug.
Well, I thank you all for your time and for coming, and so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I
Do you
have
have a
similar.
business card?
Let me give you my number. I do V cards. I don't.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm one of those people. I do everything.